Okay, so earlier this year, in January in fact, I had a goal to read 12 books. I very quickly eclipsed that goal, so I reset the goal to read 50 books for the duration of this year. Then, after eclipsing that goal, I set my third and final goal, which was to read 100 books this year. And I've already eclipsed that goal before we got to the end of the year, so let's just have a bit of a woohoo moment for Mr. Francy. I have never read 100 books in a year. It has never happened, so I'm just celebrating right now in honor of this amazing accomplishment for me. I'm going to now tell you my 3 least favorite books that I've read so far this year and my 3 favorite books. I'm going to do a much more in-depth favorite and least favorite books in December for you, so we'll go over there then, but at the moment I just want to show you to celebrate this milestone 3 books that were my favorite and my 3 least favorite. Let's do that now. Alright, so keep in mind that this is a subjective list. I will list out some reasons why I am doing least favorite now, so why I didn't like these books. You may love them, because you might like the things that I didn't like, so that's fine as well. Coming in at number 3, so this is not the least favorite, but my third least favorite so far this year, is The Last Smile in Sunder City by Luke Arnold. This is a book that follows a detective in a world that used to have magic, but the magic has now, for reasons, dried out. This detective by the name of Fetch Phillips is hired to solve things for creatures who used to be magical, but because it's dried out, aren't at the moment. This sounded really intriguing to me when I got this book. I received this book as an ARC from my bookstore because I purchased a whole ton of books and then they gave me this one as well, and the premise sounded really good, the tagline being, what do you do when the magic runs out? And I had thoughts on what this book might be about and how it would be interesting to read a fantasy where the magic has just run out, but still to learn about these creatures and how they're getting along without their magic. But no, this book is one of those books for me where I feel like the premise sounds amazing, but the execution was a failure. And so Fetch Phillips as a character is extremely dry. There's no love when it comes to anything to do with this character. The way the character is described physically, the way the character acts emotionally, the way the character thinks logically, there's no love, compassion, emotion. This character is written extremely dryly. That the plot itself is also extremely dry. It makes for an extremely dry read. And that was just something that annoyed me, and I really could have DNF'd this book, but I pushed through and I finished it and I gave it 2 stars, which it did not deserve. It deserved 1. And as a punishment, this book, while it has been completed, lives on my DNF shelf. So, because I feel that's just my little justice to it. Like, because of what you did, you're going to live on the DNF shelf. So it does now. So, if this intrigues you, a world of magic where the magic has dried out, by all means give it a go, but please know going in that you are going into a book that is extremely dry. So just be aware of that. Coming in at number 2 for my least favourite books this year is The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths. Again, this is an ARC that was given to me by my bookstore, so I mean, you know, I think I can pick out my books from now on, but I appreciate that they're giving me ARCs. I do love that, and I have read some ARCs that I have loved, but clearly not with these 2. So, The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths is a book that it's a multi-perspective book that follows a ton of different characters, and it's a gothic mystery thriller where we are trying to solve something that has happened. But here's the issue. We are following so many different perspectives, and it's really hard to keep up with them. But what makes it worse is that we follow our first perspective for 7 chapters. And I'm sorry, but by this time, I'm grounded in this world. I'm grounded with the fact that it's singular perspective. I'm starting to really love this character. And then we are thrown over to another completely different perspective for another 7 chapters. And this just did not work for me. By the time I got grounded with our second character, it happened yet again where we're flipped over to another character. The fact that I kept getting chucked every 7 chapters to another perspective, right when I was at the point that I was so incredibly invested in these characters and grounded in their perspective, that it was incredibly unsettling. Now, in saying that, because of how unsettling this was, it did distract me from the plot, and ultimately I just wanted to kind of get through the book and get to the end and find out who did it, because I was sick. It's a whodunit. I was sick of being chucked from one character that you're completely on board with to another character that you don't know, get on board with them, to another character that you don't know. The ending was a total letdown. And that's kind of where you mark your books, your thrillers and mysteries anyway, is with the conclusion. How did everything wrap up? How good was the reveal? The reveal was a letdown. So this book was just not good. And coming in at number 1, if you've been following me all year, I'm sure you're not surprised to see this at all. Some of you might be offended by this because you may worship this author like I do Brandon Sanderson, but that's okay because we are going to talk about this person and I'm going to rant for as long as I need to. It's J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring. Okay. Where do I begin? With the series as a whole, starting with The Hobbit and then going all the way through the 3 books that were originally published as one book. Oh my goodness. First of all, the fact that we have split the Lord of the Rings trilogy into 3 books is completely unnecessary, because this book, if you haven't read the book, I don't want to give away spoilers, but this book opens up with our characters setting out on a quest. By the time we get to the end of the book, we haven't really done much at all. We are traveling, stopping, eating, drinking, sleeping, waking up, getting scared someone's going to catch us, so we travel again. And that's basically all that happens. Aside from that, we have great moments that happen off screen, away from the page, that we don't get to witness, that we get retold accounts of when these characters come back to this perspective that we are following. I found this book to be incredibly pointless. There was just no need for this book. At least with book 2, we're actually starting to get somewhere. But book 1, really, all we need is chapter 1, which sets us on our path onto this quest, and we don't need the rest. Now again, there are J.R.R. Tolkien lovers out there that I'm sure are saying to me right now, oh, but Mr. Francy, you just don't understand it. And I would say the same to you about Brandon Sanderson. Oh, but you guys, you just don't understand. He's amazing. And yes, Brandon Sanderson has said that he's taken inspiration from The Lord of the Rings. And that's fine. I can appreciate how he has, having read the entire series of Lord of the Rings and having read a ton of Sanderson books. I can understand that. But J.R.R. Tolkien is incredibly descriptive. Everything that he can describe, he does. And that kind of is what I feel like the book is. We're on this quest, but the purpose of the quest is more to describe the things that we see than actual things actually happening on screen. And because of that, it got incredibly annoying. Now, I did myself an incredible disservice. In April, I picked up The Hobbit and books 1, 2, and 3 in the Lord of the Rings trilogy to celebrate my best friend's birthday. Her favourite film series is The Lord of the Rings, so I decided to read these books, finally, to say that I'd read them and to be able to talk to her with them. And I put in a clause saying, no matter what, I can't DNF any of those 4 books. I'm never doing that again. Because this book and most of the others, like pretty much all of the books that I read, The Hobbit, this one, and the next 2, were painful. Extremely painful for me to get through. And I don't know how I did it, and I was whinging and whining and complaining to everyone who listened. These days, when I talk to my dad and I say J.R.R. Tolkien, he rolls his eyes before I've even begun because he knows what I'm going to say. I have talked people's ear off about this series because of how much I just don't like J.R.R. Tolkien as a writer, how much I just don't like his writing style, I don't like how descriptive he is, but to narrow it down to this book, how incredibly pointless this book was. I think I would have much preferred to read it as a one-book bind-up, which it was originally written as. Books 1, 2, and 3 as one book. That's how it was originally. I don't know why we had to cut them. It doesn't make sense because you're reading book 1 and you're getting nowhere. Where with any other series that I've read, at least with book 1, you get somewhere. You want to get somewhere because that's what makes your reader want to read book 2. By the time I got to the end of this, I was thinking, oh my god, well, this was pointless. Let's hope we get somewhere in book 2. And, well, you didn't really get anywhere. But this is why this is my least favourite book of 2020. Let's shift gears into positive mode and talk about my 3 favourite books for 2020. Okay, before I get into my top 3 favourite books for 2020, I do want to let you know that there are multiple books that have made it to 3rd place, and I just had to go eeny, meeny, miny, moe and pick one. But please know that there are lots of books that came into 3rd place, but there are only 2 books who take up 2nd and 1st place. So, the book I've chosen to represent 3rd place is Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. So there are many others, but today we'll talk about this one, and when you see my favourites listed at the end of the year, you'll see this book, maybe in 3rd place. We'll see how we go. But I have a lot of love for this book. This is a dual perspective book that follows 2 characters, Juliet and Declan. So the premise of the book is that it begins with Declan, who is someone who works at a graveyard, and part of his job there is to mow the grass around the graves, but in order to do so he needs to move the possessions that are around the gravestone out the way for safety reasons, for safekeeping, then mow the grass and put the stuff back. One day he is moving possessions away from a grave and he spies a letter that has been written by a daughter to her dead mother and placed on the mother's grave. And he reads this letter, and he relates to this letter. So he responds to this letter. Well, the person who wrote this letter, Juliet, then goes back to the grave to see that the letter has been opened and read and responded to, and she doesn't take too kindly to this at all. But eventually, she settles down and ends up responding to the response. And this starts an anonymous back and forth between Declan and Juliet. And we find out a lot of different things about these two, and they really help each other through a lot of difficult times. I love this book for so many reasons. It's such an underrated book. I love this book because of the hard contemporary topics that it deals with. There are things that Juliet is going through that are incredibly tough to deal with. There are things that Declan has gone through and is still going through that are incredibly tough to deal with. And then Declan has a friend called Rev who is also going through things that are, oh my gosh, incredibly tough to deal with. I love that Bridget Kemmerer wasn't afraid to go there and just be as raw and real as she could with everything that she's describing about from these characters' perspectives of what they have gone through and what they're dealing with. But what Juliet and Declan do for each other is just absolutely amazing. This book has stuck with me ever since I read it. I do not remember when I read it, but ever since I read it, it's stuck with me. And in fact, just today, I actually was out at a bookstore because, yay, COVID-19 has been lifted. I can go out to a bookstore, and I bought the companion, More Than We Can Tell. So I'll be reading this in December. This is the companion to this book. So the friend of Declan's that I was talking about, he features in this book, and I'm really looking forward to that. So number 3, Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. Coming in at number 2 is a book that should not be surprising anyone who has been following my channel pretty much from day one, or if you've been following my channel anywhere at all between March and October, because I have non-stop been talking about this book. So what might surprise you is that it's coming into 2nd place now. That book is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn series, and this book made me fall in love with Brandon Sanderson. Now, yeah, it was the very first Sanderson book that I read, so it really could have been a hit and miss for me. I could have picked any of Sanderson's books, and I could have not liked it and not continued to read. But after reading Mistborn, I read all of these and all of these. So, I mean, safe to say, this book did a really good job. Now, the premise of this book is that it follows a girl whose name is Vin, whose parents have died, and she and her brother are trying to fend for themselves as part of this crew, but Vin is the only girl in this crew, and she's treated absolutely horribly because of the fact that she is a girl. She is then rescued by a man whose name is Kelsier, who has become one of my absolute favourite male characters of all year. And Kelsier takes her under his wing, puts her onto his crew, which is also a male-dominated crew. She's the only female, but she's treated so much better over there. We also come to find out that there is more to Vin than meets the eye, and she has access to magical abilities. And through the mentorship of Kelsier, Vin gets to learn how to access these magical abilities, what they are, how they work, all that kind of stuff. It's just done really, really well. The book also opens up with the bad guy having won a war. So imagine if you will, with, say for example, Harry Potter, if Lord Voldemort wins the war before book 1 begins and he is ruling everyone. That's basically what happens at the beginning of Mistborn. The evil guy won and he's ruling. He is also invincible. Kelsier and his crew, that now includes Vin, want to try and defeat the Lord Ruler, but he's immortal. So that complicates things a little bit. This book is so good. I'm hanging out for my reread, which is coming very soon. So that's number 2. So if that's coming in at number 2, then what book would come in at number 1? I mean, all year long I've been talking about The Final Empire, so how, Mr. Francy, has a book taken over The Final Empire? I'll tell you how. Because it is the most incredible book that I have ever read. You want action? It's there. You want humor? It's there. You want twists, turns, everything to keep you on the edge of your seat? It is there. And it has also been staring you in the face this whole time. It is called Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. So again, another Brando Sando. This is book 2 in the Stormlight Archives. Man, for the longest time I was saying this is the best book. I just finished reading this book not long ago. This book is my new favourite. It has everything. I can't say much about the premise of this book because it's book 2 in a series, but what I can say is that we are following the perspectives of at least 5 different characters, but Brandon Sanderson is an omniscient narrator, so it's not like we're alternating chapter here, chapter there. Anytime we can be in any of the minds of any of the characters. But basically, we are in a fictional world because it's a high fantasy, and this the main crux of the characters that we are following are in a war against another clan of people, and throughout the series, we get to learn more about these characters. In book 1, we get a then and now for one of the perspectives, and in book 2, we get a then and now for another character, and book 3 is another character as well. So we not only get different perspectives of how they are now, but each book will have moments where you have chapters where you're just going back in the past for one character, which is also a good thing because you get to learn more and more about who they were prior to the first book. The action-packed scenes in this book are written so incredibly well. The characters are so easily investable. The humor in this book is so funny. But we are out of time already. Can you believe it? So I am going to leave that there. I can't believe that I've reached 100 books, you guys. So, yeah. However many books you have read, I hope that you're proud of yourself. Whether you've read 1 book, 2 books, 10, 20, 30, however many you've read, I hope you're proud of yourself. I never thought I would read 100 books in a year. The fact that I've gone over that has just Oh my gosh, I've exceeded my expectations and I'm just really proud of myself, and I don't really celebrate my own accomplishments on this channel, so I thought I would take a moment to do that here, and I hope you can appreciate that. But that is where I will leave it, letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah! Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading! Bye guys! Bye!